According to the YouTube analytics dashboard, you guys are searching for the easiest way to paint Warhammer a lot. So I wanted to make a video on what's the best result I can get painting this in the easiest way possible. So I'm going to use this old Fay Enchantress model because I had it around. It's an eBay rescue that I just did a little bit of filling on, and I just think it's a beautiful model. I want to run it as a Damsel in the old world. So I bought this primed already. I think it's Wraithbone, and then I just did some gap filling, and then I covered those spots with a little bit of surface primer from Vallejo. I'm going to paint this in the easiest, laziest way possible. That means contrast paints and some metallics, nothing else, no blending, no mixing paints. Simple, fast as can be. Let's see how it turns out. I'm not doing a zenithal priming here, I just have the one layer of Wraithbone, but I'm still going to dry brush on some white. This still counts as incredibly easy. Just find an old makeup brush, dip it in white, dry it a little bit on a paper towel, and then just cover the model. I did a real heavy dry brush on this one just because thanks to that surface primer, I had two different colors on the primer, which will show up in the contrast paint, and so I wanted to cover that with the white. So again, really heavy dry brush. I'm getting a lot of coverage with the white here, just leaving a little bit of that Wraithbone in the crevices. Now the real painting begins. As we always do with contrast paints, we're going to work from inside out. Starting with the hooves, we're just going to put a little bit of Black Templar contrast and get those covered. Try not to get it on any of the tufts of fur, hair, what do horses have? Whatever it is, just try not to get paint on it. Now we're moving on to the body. Painting this easiest way possible means I'm just going to take some apothecary white and cover the body of the white unicorn. If you're not used to this color, don't panic. It looks a lot better when it dries. Just in case the unicorn horn isn't doing enough to sell the Fey aspect of this horse, I'm going to do the mane and the longer fur in Eandon yellow. This color covers really well. It might be the best paint in Citadel's contrast paint lines. I like it a lot. It's a little bright for what we want here, but I'll show you how I tone it down later on in the video. Be a little careful around the feet so we don't get yellow where we don't want it to be. If you have gaps between the long fur and the hooves that are white you're trying to get to, don't worry about them for now. When we come back to tone down the yellow here, we will get those gaps filled in. Now that I'm getting some color on the unicorn, I'm actually thinking this might turn out pretty okay. A little bit of skeleton horde is what made the most sense to me if we're doing this unicorn's horn and adhering to the only paint the easiest way possible rules. While we got the skeleton horde out, I'm just going to keep going and cover up all the Eandon yellow with it. It's going to tone it down a bit. It's still going to show through as a golden blonde, but it's going to have a little bit more depth, a little bit more realistic, and this will help cover up any white spots left behind by the other color. Moving on to the damsel herself, we're just going to do her boot and gore grunt of fur. gives me like a reddish leathery tone that I think works pretty good here. And then for some of her metal bits, we're going to hit it with some hoplite gold. Army Painter just released these metallic, basically contrast paints, their version of contrast paints, and I think most of them are terrible, but this color right here is really good. It covers well. It does add depth. This is a good color to pick up. Now we take some Guilliman flesh and get all of her exposed areas. Be very careful. This color likes to coffee stain pretty easily. And we're sticking with the rules. Easiest way to paint Warhammer. Only contrast paints here, so we gotta make it work. We're just taking our time here, being very careful not to paint over any areas we've already touched, and to not let it pull where we don't want to. I honestly think this color is a little too dark for her. If I was doing under normal circumstances, I would have cut this with some Lamy and medium, so it wasn't quite as dark. It would have left her a paler tone, but I'm trying to keep with the theme of doing this the easiest way possible, which means no mixing paints. Being a little bold here, I'm going to color her dress in the contrast Imperial Fist color. This might not work out because I already have so much yellow on the unicorn, but I wanted to give it a shot. I should also add that this is part of the second wave of Citadel contrast paints, and these paints cover amazingly well, but they don't pull as well as the first generation like Eandon Yellow or Guilliman Flesh. So they don't coffee stain, which is good, but they don't add as much depth as the original run did. You can see with this dress that the folds in her cloth are not getting as dark as they would have, say, if we did one of the first generation batches. For the sake of this video, I'm just going to leave it as is, and it does add some depth there. It's just something to be aware of if you want to use these colors. Sticking with bright colors, we're going to use this Volupus? Christ, who names these? Anyways, we're using GW's Contrast Pink to do her outrageous hat. A loud hat needs loud colors, that's just science. There's a lot of detail into this hat, but in keeping with the theme of this video, painting Warhammer the easiest way possible, we are just going to cover it all in the pink and just let the contrast poke out those details a little bit. Okay, and we're back to Apothecary White. I'm just going to use it for the ribbon in the, over the top hat and the fur lining on the dress. Again, we could probably do more with this fur. An off-white color would be really good here, but keeping with the theme, easiest way to paint Warhammer and see what we get at the end. I think this is a good way to go. The Apothecary White's going to add some depth to that fur lining, make the dress look a little fancier. Okay, we're getting a little close to the end here. I'm just going to start doing some of the metallics, the little small detail work. Right here, I'm using Mithril Blade from Two Thin Coats to make her mirror shiny silver. And then the same for her necklace. And then a little bit more of that hoplite gold around the mirror and for the handle. A little bit of lead belcher from Citadel to do her blade. Normally there'd be a lot of highlighting here, but we're going to try to just do a base coat and a shade and see what we get in the spirit of this video. A little bit of Sir Coats silver from Two Thin Coats for the metallic parts of her belt, and then some classic snakebite leather contrast paint from Citadel for the rest, and we're getting pretty close. Just add a little bit of gold for the pennants on her dress, and I think we're going to go ahead and do the handle of her sword in that color as well. Even if you're going for a lazy, fast paint job, you gotta make some time to just put a little bit of Nuln Oil on your model. If you watch my other videos, you've heard me call it this before. It is talent in a bottle. It will help so much with small transitions, with adding depth, with making your colors blend together. It is such a good tool to use. So we're going to add a little bit here, especially around the metallic parts. And now all we have left is that cape. Just like before, we're going to hit with the dry brush first. Then I'm going to cover everything but the fur lining in our contrast pink. There's, again, a lot of details on this. I'm just going to ignore that. We're painting this the easiest way possible. We're just going to trust the contrast to bring those details to the forefront by itself. We're going to follow up with that by putting Apothecary White on the fur lining, make it match the rest of the dress, and then we're left with the fun task of gluing these metal pieces together. And boom, this is what we're left with. We just speed painted this model in the easiest way possible, and honestly, the results turned out pretty okay. But it's not perfect, especially when it comes to the skin of both the horse and the damsel. I like to clean up that. I would like to do some detailing work. This is my model, but if you just want to get on the tabletop with some color on it, I think this is a really solid result. Maybe I'll do a future video where I just kind of, take this model and bump it up to more of a Tabletop Plus standard. Thanks for watching. I hope that helps.